Damien, Mr. Kirk. Sorry, Damien.
Thank you very much,
Please
Madam
begin.
Chair.
6 minutes.
Thank you, and Ms. Tate, thank you for coming back to committee. I find it interesting, in your opening statement, you did not mention the reason why you were called back to this committee, and that is the $18 million in bonuses that CBC paid out. $18 million in bonuses.
Order, Madam Chair.
Yes, is that Mr.
There are two things. One is the sound online is cutting in and out. We're not getting half of what's being said when Mr. Kirk is speaking. So I don't know what we can do to fix that. But well, I'm going to stick to that one because it's very hard to actually hear what he was saying. So I don't know if it's his mic or if it's the room. It was happening a little bit with Madame Tate, but with Mr. Kirk, it was pretty hard to decipher.
So shall we suspend a bit until we figure this out?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Damien. Sorry, Ms. Tate.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Ms. Tate, thank you for joining the Heritage Committee again. I find it interesting in your opening statement, you didn't mention the $18 million in bonuses that were paid out. And certainly when I speak to and hear from thousands of Canadians.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay. That's a game.
Okay, if this is the game that the Liberals simply don't want to talk about the bonuses, then at least be honest about it.
There's a point of order. What is it, Mr. Nur Mohammed?
Well, there are two things I would now say. One is that Mr. Kirk now knows me well enough to know that this is not about playing games. We did have, and we still seem to have, some crackling on the audio, pointing that out. However, I did want to make sure that we are clear about what the mandate of Madame Tate's appearance was today, and I understand it was from the House order in respect of the cuts to the CBC, not about bonuses. I just want to be clear about what it is that the discussion today is supposed to be about.
Thank you, Mr. Nur Mohammed.
Certainly wasn't a point of order. And again, it seems like the Liberals are terrified, like Ms. Tate, about talking about the $18 million in bonuses that were awarded to individuals at the CBC. Now, Ms. Tate, in your opening statement, you asked for more money. Yet the last time more money was awarded to the CBC, it went to bonuses. As a show of leadership from the top, can you, and I'm going to, this was asked to you before, and you didn't answer clearly, so I'm going to give you another opportunity here today. Will you categorically reject any bonus that is offered to you as your tenure as the CEO of CBC comes to a close?
Madam Chair, there were a number of questions in that question, if I may.
I heard that, and I really wanted to correct the idea. If the committee wishes, I can reread the motion. It is about cuts to CBC and the impact of defunding the CBC. That's one of the things that was clear. It was not about bonuses, because if you recall, Ms. Tate was here not too long ago talking about bonuses. So I think we should read that I will read it provided now, including how the Liberal threat to cut funding led to hundreds of CBC Radio Canada job cuts and the effects on smaller communities as promised by the leader of the official opposition and the consequences of defunding the CBC. That's clearly what the motion says.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And look, I think that it is clear that Ms. Tate, in her opening statement, asked for more money. And Conservatives do not believe that if the leader at the top of the organization is unwilling to make a commitment to say that they won't accept a bonus to what could be the tune of hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' money at a time when people are being laid off. The last time the CBC asked for more money, they paid out more bonuses. Ms. Tate, to you today, out of respect for the organization that you've led over the last number of years, will you reject, if offered, a taxpayer-funded bonus?
Madam Chair, I've appeared at this committee now 5 times, and I believe that I have more than adequately responded to questions about performance pay. I do want to correct the record. The funding that CBC Radio-Canada received, the $42 million, went to save 454 jobs of the 800 forecast jobs that were needed to be cut. So just to be clear, that money went to save jobs.
So just imagine, you say that it went to save jobs, yet still $18 million in bonuses were paid out. $18 million of taxpayers' money went out in bonuses. Ms. Tate, your tenure at the CBC is coming to a close at the beginning of January. Will you commit to not take a taxpayer-funded severance at the conclusion of your tenure?
Let me say, just to clarify, the $18 million was an obligation that the corporation had to the unaffiliated employees, the 1,180 unaffiliated employees. We have a payroll of close to $900 million. If the member believes that we make decisions about performance pay in a frivolous fashion, I have to correct him. These dollars on payroll are put in place at the beginning of every year. So to suggest that funding that was provided at the end of the year was used in that way is simply incorrect.
So $71,000 on average per executive? That's more than the average Canadian makes. Madam Tate, you make more than the Prime Minister makes, yet you refuse to reject a taxpayer-funded severance. So again, I ask the question to you today, Madam Tate. Will you reject a severance paid for by taxpayers at the conclusion of your term as CEO of CBC?
As I've told this committee repeatedly, I have not received performance pay since 21-22. And given the terms of my compensation, like all other GIC appointees, every president and a CEO of every crown includes salary and performance pay. I leave that decision to the government.
But you could reject that today, yet you won't. So as we come to, how much time do I have left?
A minute, but I was going to say, I think I've heard this question asked at least 10 times at this committee in the past. So Ms. Tate has answered it. Would you like to move on, Mr. Kuek?
Thank you, and I will move on by simply saying this. I think that Canadians, and Madam Tate, you said in your opening statement that you speak to Canadians on a regular basis, and internal emails suggested that you sent and that were accessed by access to information, said that there's momentum growing on the Defund the CBC movement. And your appearance here today, as has been the case over the last number of appearances that you've made, it's certainly not surprising as to why that is the case. There's a decreased trust in the public broadcaster. Revenues are down. Ad revenue is down. And most importantly, viewers. There are fewer viewers watching your programming. It is, do you have any regrets, Madam Tate, over your tenure as CEO of the CBC?
Ms. Tate, you have 30 seconds.
Madam Chair, may I address the untrue accusations of the member? Every media company in the country is cutting jobs. Our industry is in crisis. In our case, we forecast 800 cuts. And in the end, we worked hard to make sure that the lion's share of those were vacancies. 205 vacancies were cut. So I do believe that we're talking about the wrong things here. Digital revenue has tripled since I began at CBC Radio-Canada. Viewership is, in fact, up on digital platforms because, with all due respect to the member, television viewing in general is down. So I would just say, let us focus on the facts. I provided all the members with this excellent document prepared by my staff on the facts around CBC Radio-Canada. And I really urge you to spend the time to learn about Canadians' viewership behavior. They are online. Canadians are watching CBC on YouTube, on connected TVs.
Thank you, Ms. Tate.
12 months. 2 months ago, the CBC, your organization, said the ad revenues were down, and you've stated today that that is the case. Last year at this time, your organization made the biggest staff reduction ever. So since, and you've admitted this, $1.4 billion of public funding accounts goes to the CBC. Now we know the ad revenue is down, which makes up, I think, 30% of the commercial activities for the corporation. Are you planning then any staff reductions in the month ahead?
there are a couple of things I'd like to correct, Madam Chair, if I may. The biggest job reduction ever in the previous 10 years before I arrived at CBC, there were over 1,000 jobs cut at CBC Radio-Canada. The net loss of jobs in the 6.5 years that I have served is actually 90, because, by the way, we also create new jobs. We're talking here about 141 occupied positions that were lost. So let's not
move on,
let's deal with facts here. In terms of TV ad revenue, I have said repeatedly.
Yeah, we know that.
Okay, so what is your question?
My question is, are you going to reduce staff like you did last year in December? The private sector has already started staff reductions,
Yes.
as you know. Last year, you followed them in the month of December. Are you going to do that again?
So I will say and I can say this very openly to this committee, that thanks to the $42 million that we received, we will deliver the budget for 24-25, which ends in March, without further staff reductions.
You said at the beginning you need more funding. You said that in your opening 5-minute statement. Have you asked the minister or any of the Liberal cabinet ministers for more funding going ahead for 24-25?
Since I began this job in 2018, I have been asking all stakeholders. I have met with ministers, I have met with MPs from both sides, all sides of the table, to talk about the structural financial challenges that CBC Radio-Canada faces. I just described how with $32 per head, we're delivering enormous value. And I have been speaking about the need for more funding.
How much more?
I started with, and I think I said so to Deputy Champoux, we need in the $400 to $500 million range to have sustainable, manageable funds to have a vibrant, robust service. I mean, I just, if I may, this talk about TV revenues being down. Do you think that CBC Radio-Canada or Radio-Canada alone can compete with billions of dollars from the streamers like Netflix and Amazon?
Well, let me ask you
impossible.
this. Your key performance indicators, which you have not met, and I think that's why the public is a little upset with the bonuses. You only have met 3 of the 14. You admitted here last time you moved the goalposts so that you could get the KPIs. I think that's why taxpayers in this country are upset with you and the CBC board right now. You've moved the KPIs so you could get the $18.3 million in bonuses and over $3 million in executive bonuses. That is the issue with the CBC right now, Ms. Tate, which you appear to not read the public on this.
Well,
they are upset with you on this.
I'm very sorry. You're misrepresenting the facts.
Not.
Yes, you are. I'm very sorry, Madam Chair. We do not move the goalposts.
You admitted it last time.
Our KPIs are based on market data.
Can you allow the witness to answer the question you asked her, Kevin?
It's like football. You moved the goalposts so you could get your KPIs, so that you could get the $18 million in bonuses. We all know that. You've admitted that in previous testimony at the Canadian Heritage Year. And that's why Canadians are upset.
Ms. Tate, please answer the question.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I have been asked the same questions over and over again. I have answered the questions. If the purpose of this appearance is to simply throw a barrage of insults in my direction, to discredit the organization, it is totally unproductive.
Ms. Tate, I'll move on. You've got the Olympic contract for...
You have 1 minute.
Thank
1
you.
second, Mr.
1 second or 1 minute?
1 second.
Oh, I'm done then. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to cut you off, guys. All right?
I'll get right to it. Ms. Tate, would you categorize your term at the CBC as a success?
Yes.
So you believe that you've left it in a better place than how you found it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if I just go through a few things, and I just have to say, you must have quite the echo chamber there if you believe that, because when we're talking about how out of touch the CBC can be with Canadians, you only need to look at the bonuses that you paid out during an affordability crisis to executives and senior management while laying off the frontline staff, something that even Peter Mansbridge called the CBC out for. When we look at all the metrics, all the key performance indicators, ad revenue overall down, trust is down, despite polls that the CBC might have commissioned for itself. Independent third-party organizations that analyze this indicate that trust in the CBC fell 17% in just 4 years. Viewership is down, less than 3% in primetime markets. That means during prime time, when Canadians are getting into living rooms to watch what is on TV, 97% of Canadians say no to the CBC, tune it out, and move on to other things. Based on all of that, Ms. Tate, I just want to say, on behalf of the Conservative Party, I want to thank you for your efforts in helping us promote the campaign to defund the CBC, because I think outside of the Conservative caucus, you have been the most successful person in creating the demand to defund the CBC. $1.4 billion of taxpayers' money doesn't go for an online streaming service. It goes to a whole host of products in which Canadians are choosing other sources of information and entertainment. So again, I don't really have a question there. I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts to help us defund the CBC.
Did you have a comment?
I must say that it really does shock me the extent to which certain members of this committee and sups in, or whatever you call it, seem to make me the target and throw insults to my tenure at CBC Radio-Canada in order to discredit the organization. The organization has stood for 90 years, and we know 79% of Canadians say they believe that CBC Radio-Canada should continue. And so to have this be somehow a proof that we should be defunding the CBC is ridiculous.
Thank you, Ms. Tate. So I understand Mr. Kurek is not sharing with you. Go ahead, Mr. Scheer.
Just want to point out that those were not insults. It may be insulting to hear that ad revenue is down, but that is just a fact. It may be insulting to hear that 97% of Canadians choose to watch other things on TV other than the CBC, but that is just a fact. It is just a fact that trust in the CBC has fallen by 17% in just 4 years. When I had a chance to ask you about trust in the CBC, one of your responses back was that corrections were up, that the number of corrections that the CBC News issued is up, and that was a proof, some kind of evidence that the CBC could be trusted. I look at it the other way. When you have a falsehood broadcast on the national news, and then a correction that follows up a few days later, or on an online post, that doesn't instill confidence and trust in the CBC. It points out that the CBC allows things to get to air before doing proper vetting, validation, and fact-checking. And it may be insulting to hear the dollar amounts about executive bonuses, but I'll tell you who was really insulted. The frontline workers that were laid off when the CBC was claiming it didn't have enough money to keep that entire workforce, and then reads in the paper or reads on a news source other than the CBC, because they probably weren't watching it either, that senior management and executive all got bonuses. So again, those are just facts. Everything I have listed off
15
comes
seconds?
from third-party independent sources that have indicated all that. And so I just want to again say thanks for your help in our efforts to defund the CBC.
Mr. Scheer. I now go to the Liberals for the last piece, and it's going to be Mr. New Mohammed.